So in this video, we're going to look at IT sourcing strategies. So what are sourcing strategies? Sourcing strategies are basically methods that we use to select the companies or the businesses or the parties that are going to supply goods and services to us. So these companies could be providing things like hardware and software, or they could be providing the actual services like developers, network configurers, or network administrators, system administrators, or consultants for our business. So it has to be noted that companies these days may not necessarily just have standalone IT activities in the business. They have to think of how they can align their business, their IT works to the overall business goals and strategies. So in so doing, the businesses now are now looking for more value, and more value at times is attained from other businesses or other parties that are outside of your business. So by partnering with other businesses, businesses can also extend their capabilities in areas that they are not strong in, and therefore they can boost what they can do and become even better in whatever they are doing. So by partnering as well with other organizations, businesses can reduce the risk when it comes to the service that they source. So if you are partnering with a business that's, for example, registered or certified in some operations, you know that the risk has been reduced, or at the same time, you are not having to hire new people into your business to provide that service. And these sourcing decisions can change over time, so they are not stagnant. It's not like if we decide to say we are going to employ IT people, that's how it's going to be forever. Or if we decide that we're going to outsource the IT service to another company, that's how it's going to stay. Everything will be fluid and will change based on what's happening in our environment. So there may be need for you to actually come up with a with a formal sourcing strategy that you can use in a business. Now, this, as you said, since it changes, this can be for a certain period of time. For example, you can say for the next 2 years, we're going to use insourcing, or then afterwards we're going to evaluate, or for the next 3 years we'll be using shared services and the like. So once you've decided on that, then you stick to that until you're done, or you regularly review it. Now, what are some of the driving factors towards the decisions to use a certain sourcing strategy? The first one will be business priorities. What is it that the business that is prioritizing? Is it prioritizing having its own, being able to manage its own customer experience, or is it prioritizing sticking to its core values? There's also the issue of value creation for the business. Are IT costs so high that if we outsource, they become lower compared to the value that they're giving to business? There's also the issue of prevailing economic and market space conditions. Some of the prevailing conditions may not really be suitable for you to outsource, but rather to insource. And at times, it will be better for you to have an in-house team than to outsource, because if the environment makes it cheaper to have an IT department in-house, then you do so. There's also the risk assessment of engagement with, for example, partners. If you're operating an environment where business is just open and close at any time, then it's not really worth it to outsource. But it's better for you to have an in-house team that you control. So those are some of the risks that you have to assess as you think of a sourcing strategy. Then there's also the time period of the sourcing decision. How long is this sourcing strategy going to be used in the business? Then there's also the issue of business expansion or the environmental expansions. For example, changes in laws, availability of skills, and the culture that will force you to say, you know what, instead of managing an internal team that has to adhere to certain cultures and laws, I can outsource this to some other organization that is already experiencing such things and allow me to focus solely on my key business. And also, you need to think of disaster recovery and management in terms of how can your partners that you engage in your sourcing strategies help you in the event of a disaster and help you to manage the business continuity of your operations if anything is to go wrong. So it's not just about picking someone who is good, but you also need to look at how are these people going to help me when I'm in trouble? Are they going to be there, or are they going to absorb themselves of any responsibility and walk away whilst I'm burning? So the ways that we can make some of these sourcing decisions can be based on discipline. So you can say, based on this, on databases, or based on savers, or based on networks, we're going to decide whether we're going to use this or that sourcing strategy. It can also be strategic, so you can actually decide to take on a sourcing strategy as a strategic decision, either to get into a certain market, to partner with certain people, to get value from other organizations, and the like. Or it can be just for managing your routine purposes. For example, if it's about getting your printer serviced, if it's about getting your network checked, if it's about just getting your systems audited, it could just be routine work or everyday work that you may need to just outsource and get it done by somebody else. So the types of contracts that you get into with your partners, of various types, and some of them are of the following types. The first one can be a service level agreement, where you say we expect a certain level of service in order for us to pay you, or for you to be able to get certain benefits for us. So, for example, if it's uptime, you could say we expect a system or website uptime of 99% per day for you to be able to say you've actually achieved your work. Then there's also a business outcome based contract, where you say we expect a certain outcome based on your operations. So we can say we expect more people to visit our website because now you are managing that side of our business. So that's a business outcome based contract. Or it can be a utility based, which is a pay on use basis. This one is similar to what cloud service providers give. For example, Amazon Web, you pay based on the time you have used their resources or on your server. Not, and you just don't pay because you have a server. No, you pay based on, for example, the amount of time that your server was on, or the amount of resources that it has used during its operations. Other contracts can be based on cost improvement, on user experience enhancement, on reducing the risk to the company. Some of the contracts can have legal bindings, can be based on legal bindings in other areas of a business. So for you to be able to have a certain operation or a certain product, there may be need for you to also have an outsourced service as part of the contract. So that's where you might say, I want to have this product, this website, and I want to have this feature on the website where people can record their own videos. But for me to have that service, I need to have a vendor or an external party managing that service. And so you can have an outsourced agreement as a result of legal bindings in another contract. Other contracts will involve revenue sharing. So you can say, I now want to sell some airtime bundles. So those with the system will come, and then you partner. You have the market, they have the system, you partner, and then you share revenue. And there are also risk-based contracts where you share the risks, where you decide on which risk is taken by who. In the event of some certain things happening, who takes responsibility and who suffers the loss for that occurrence. So when you're considering coming up with a sourcing strategy, you need to first have a strategy team for your sourcing mechanisms that will decide and sit and think of how best to find to engage other parties or to keep services in-house. So this team could include your CEO and other business leaders. And then you need to come up with periodic reviews and implementation plans that are documented, which you will refer to when you're making your decisions on what to do with your sourcing. Then you also need to have a holistic approach to IT service procurement for both short and long term, so that you are always on top of the effects of the decisions that you're making concerning the sourcing strategy that you have decided. So you need to have proper methodologies, processes, and logic for deciding on your sourcing strategy. You need to have reviews. You need to make sure that whatever strategy you choose is completely aligned to what the business wants to achieve. And you need to be agile enough to be able to change in the event that the business decides to go in a different direction at any time. So you should still be able to also change your sourcing strategy, which means at times you may not have to have a long-term contract with your service providers, but shorter-term contracts so that in the event of any change, you can quickly pivot and do something else. So the importance of a sourcing strategy. So after looking at the importance of a sourcing strategy, we're now going to look at the various types of sourcing strategies that we can use. So the importance of a sourcing strategy is that it aligns IT with the business. As usual, the whole goal is we want to achieve IT business alignment. So sourcing strategies also help us to make sure that however we are acquiring or using the services in the organization, the IT services in the organization is aligning with the overall business goals. It also helps keep the business ahead, for example, in terms of best technologies or in terms of cost cutting. It also creates value network in core business process. So sourcing strategies can also help us to say we can network with other companies, or at the same time we can stick to our core business at any time. It helps us leverage our sourcing partners' capabilities to add value. This we'll look at when we're now looking at the advantages of the various sourcing strategies. And ensures IT is in line with corporate governance and reduce project failure risk, and as well as to cut IT operations costs. We are going to look at this when we look at the various sourcing strategies. So we can say there are three main sourcing models. The first one is insourcing. This is where we have our own IT department, where we have our own IT personnel within the company, and they do everything for us. Then we have outsourcing. Outsourcing, this is where we give some of the IT operations or some of the IT activities or tasks to outsiders, to a third-party company or to vendors that will then do it on our behalf. Then we have multi-sourcing. Multi-sourcing is a form of outsourcing which we'll look at, where we have a blend of both in-house people doing IT as well as some outsourced services. Then the fourth one, we could say we have got shared services. This shared services is where we have a company or a business and its subsidiaries sharing the IT costs or the IT infrastructure that they use. So let's start with the in-house sourcing or internal sourcing. This one is where we have the IT team being part of the internal staff and everything is done by them. The reasons I would do this is because you already have the logistical system or mechanisms in place. We believe that our team, the in-house team, has got better capabilities or the better expertise than anyone out there. We also find that the logistical nightmare can be very complex if we consider outsourcing. So it may be better for us to manage all those complexities in-house than to outsource them to someone who may not be able to manage them. Also, we know our business much better than a third party would. So we know what we are doing. So it's better for us to keep doing it ourselves than anyone else may not know. And it may also be too difficult to integrate with other parties. Also, there may be a belief that cost reductions will not be realized through outsourcing. Yeah, and this one is true. If you realize that there is no need for you to have an outsourced service, which may actually end up being more costly, then it's better to just have it in-house. And also, the political climate may not allow you to outsource, so it may be better to just keep everything in-house. So some of the benefits of insourcing is we maintain control for our logistical functions. We are not dependent on any other third-party system or any other third-party company. We know all our costs because there are no hidden costs with which anyone is charging. There's confidentiality of information. So because we control all our systems, no one can see or hack or tap into our information without our approval. And also the risks of outsourcing are mitigated, which we'll look at when we look at outsourcing. Some of the disadvantages of insourcing include we may not be able to cut costs. The costs that we might have cut, we are still incurring them. And then there's decreased flexibility if their business, if the operating environment change. Unlike if we outsource, if it's their job to just give us a certain service, then we have to pivot whether they like it or not to continue giving us that service. The risks are also not shared, so any risk or any problem that we face, we're going to shoulder it ourselves. There's also reduced access to expertise. We only have the expertise of the people that we currently have. But when you outsource, you've got the advantage that you can tap into other people's brains who may be specialists in that area. Therefore, they may have even greater expertise in those areas. There's also a reduced access to technology as well as high fixed costs of buying our own equipment and our own infrastructure. Now, looking at shared services, this is where we said a business could be having subsidiaries. So all those subsidiaries will then share the IT infrastructure for their operations. So with shared services, the primary focus is to make sure that we concentrate all our services in one place such that we have no duplication of services and all the various business subsidiaries share the same functionalities. And a keynote is to say if cost is not reduced by making sure that all these business subsidiaries are sharing IT services, then it's no longer shared services, but it's rather internal services. So it's more like you're just saying we are combining people, but you're still hiring the same number of people you'd hire if the companies were separate. It helps with standardization across the various subsidiaries, but it does not scale well enough, as you shall see in the next slide. So some of the advantages of shared services that will lower costs. We have got improved standardization of IT services across our various organizations. There's also a reduction in cost because now since we are sharing IT infrastructure, we hire less people, we buy less equipment, and therefore our capital expenditure becomes low. There's also improved performance through centers of excellence. So if within our shared service, we make sure that we hire the best people for each role, then we can get best performance across all the companies because the services are being managed by the best. And there's also a better focus on core business because we are focusing less on IT. We have created more of a business unit in costs to manage our IT, and therefore we can focus on the subsidiaries' core business. However, some of the disadvantages include lack of scalability. So businesses, since they are now sharing certain resources, if they come up with a certain innovation or if they grow in certain areas, they may not be able to quickly adopt the technologies that they need in order to grow because they have to adhere to a certain standard that is being administered within the shared services framework. There are also high implementation and transition costs. So when you're bringing in a new business and you're helping it to standardize to everything that you have, that can also become costly. There's also reduced control of administrative services. So each company is no longer able to control its IT department as it wants to. It now has to adhere to the shared services framework. There's need also, the other disadvantage is that departments may have to compromise on what they need. So if you need certain operations or certain systems or certain ways of configuring your network, you may not be able to do so because you have to adhere to a certain framework within the shared services architecture. Also, support services may be less accessible. So the IT team may not be as accessible as it would be if it were a standalone team within that company, because now they have to share resources, and then in order to be able to save everybody, they now have some complex processes involved, and it becomes very difficult for an ordinary user to quickly get services from them. Outsourcing. So outsourcing, as we said, it's about taking what you would normally do within your company under the IT department to an external party that would do it for you. For example, if you had to buy, instead of buying your own hardware equipment, you rent or buy some other hardware at a different company who will manage it for you, who will service it for you, and who will do all the configurations for you. And that's exactly the cloud model that is being used by companies like AWS, by companies like Microsoft Azure, etc. So outsourcing is basically just saying we no longer want to do this ourselves. Let's give it to somebody else outside the company who will do it for us. Now, some of the reasons for outsourcing include lowering costs, enhanced flexibility to grow, adapt, because the company we've outsourced to can help us in that area. There could be improved service. We could be able to service more customers during peak season or overflow capacities. There's access to technology as well as to expertise that we may not have internally. and it may also help us meet some regulatory requirements and compliance issues. Some of the advantages of outsourcing include reduced operating costs, increased flexibility, improved customer service. We have access to better expertise and better technologies. We share risk with the people that we have outsourced to, and there's increased agility where there's need for us to quickly pivot or change direction in our business. However, the disadvantages include loss of control. We no longer control our own IT systems and what happens in them. We depend on this third party to provide us with the service that we require. If corporate cultures don't tally well, then we've got a problem of companies that may not be pulling in the same direction. Confidentiality and security of information may be lost, and some of the information may actually be spied to or hacked. And also, we are tied to the well-being of that company. So if that company does not perform well, then we are also at risk of receiving a bad service. There are a lot of hidden costs as well as political issues between the various companies. Now, the various outsourcing strategies are as follows. There's full outsourcing, where we give a single contract to a single service provider who provides us with everything that we require. So there's just one company providing us all our IT services as full outsourcing. Then we have prime outsourcing, where we give a contract to a single service provider, but this single service provider then looks for other people to help them meet our IT needs. So this type of outsourcing, that is prime outsourcing, has got the advantage that we can get the best services, since whoever we're contracting to is also getting other people who will help them to give us the service that we require. Then we have consortium outsourcing. This is where we as the company look for our own service providers, but we then ask them to organize themselves and come up with one management interface. So these various service providers, when they're interacting with us, they interact as if they are one company. But it's our responsibility to choose the various service providers we want to work with, but it's their responsibility to organize themselves and appear as one company to us. Then selective outsourcing is where us as a business, we choose the various service providers that we want to work with, and then we also manage how they interact with us. So we are the ones responsible for managing these companies, how they interact with the company, and how they provide the service to the company. So this is all about IT sourcing strategy within this course. I hope you have learned something and this information is helpful. Thank you.